Hello and welcome into the Sporting Pod, our second episode. I want to thank everybody for the kind words after our first episode. It was nice to hear that people are so far enjoying what we're doing, along with Tony Allegretti, Mauricio Ruiz. I'm Cole Pepper. And today on the Sporting Pod, we're going to talk about the women's team and the impact of that and some of the storylines that I think will come out of having the first ever pro women's franchise in Jacksonville. We have a lot of different sort of layers to this. The first of which I think we need to talk about is the impact that it would have on the youth soccer community in Jacksonville. Mauricio, you're perfect to talk to this. As a father of a young girl, and my wife played soccer growing up, I know the excitement level that comes with that. But from let's look at it from the standpoint of an 8-year-old girl playing soccer now, club soccer here in the city. The impact of having a pro team in her town is, I think, going to be pretty fantastic.
Sure, and especially because there's never really been anything here for them to look up to, inspire to. Obviously, you have our local D1, D2 college teams, which have done really well. But then that idea and that picture of what do I do professionally, and is soccer ever a consideration for me to pursue on the field or off the field, but in soccer professionally? And there's never been that representation here in town. So when you can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it, all of a sudden it becomes a reality. And I think that's what's going to be for these girls coming up here in these next several years. Being able to attend a game, seeing players that look like them professionally, that are pursuing a career, that changes their perspective in what soccer is like. It's no longer attainable only for the men and international as they see in England and they see on TV, but now it's attainable in their backyard. And they can actually invest, and parents can get even more excited about investing in their kids. But for the little girls and little boys, but it would be something that would be special for them to be able to now have a role model that looks like them, that they can look up to. They can go to the games. And soccer is such a relatable game that players are accessible. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine that our professional women's players are going to want to get to know their community that they play in and they play for, which is the beauty of the game of soccer. It's not this kind of separated from the fan base. In fact, it's very much a community sport, and you play for your community. So I think the girls here are just going to love being able to come to the games and in a very private setting of a game and open practices and just being out in the community. It's just going to inspire them a lot. We already have some great young girls footballers here in town that play at the professional level, that play at top colleges. Imagine that's exponentially going to do for the next generation.
You talk about community so often in your answer there, and Tony, this is one of the things that really strikes me about not just the men's team too, but especially because there hasn't been that opportunity for women athletes in our area, and we can start going down the list of professional athletes either in soccer or basketball or track and field and some other sports who have gone on to do big things in their sports who are from Jacksonville, but to have that to look up to, I mean, it's powerful when you grow up as a kid and you can go to the game in your hometown and that you relate to that player. And I've talked a lot in the past about how fans connect with players. One of those ways is that the player does something important in a game that the fan finds to be important. Playoff game, rivalry game, whatever. The second is that if you have an interaction with them personally at some point, at a charity event, walking out of a restaurant, get an autograph, a selfie, whatever. Number three is if you find common ground where you realize, hey, that person has a dachshund, I have a dachshund, or whatever the case may be. The fourth one sometimes is how you play him in a video game or fantasy football. You get the connection to him, maybe good, maybe bad, depending on the fantasy team. I'm not sure that's going to be as big an issue here, but these opportunities, Tony, one-on-one, to have them create those connections, I think is going to be a huge thing for soccer fans in general, but especially for girls in our neighborhood.
Totally agree. We've got like 60,000, I think, students in DCPS that are girls. they've never had, it's a travesty, they've never had role models like Mauricio was saying, that play professional sports on a team sport that they can look up to. Now, our players are going to be touring schools. We're going to continue to do all the things that we are doing in the community now and really expand when we have coaches and teams, report in. And so I think it's a privilege for us to present that first women's pro team and all that it can mean for, like you're saying, your daughter, everyone out there who's playing and aspiring to that top level. The other thing that I would mention is that we're waiting to hear on this. Maybe where you're going next. Mm-hmm. We're waiting to hear on the status of the sanctioning, and this could be really big. I mean, this could really have some ripple effects internationally, and it's any moment now. I think we're going to get feedback on that.
That feedback, of course, is that there are certain league standards that are put out by U.S. Soccer that have been written down in black and white, and I don't believe this was initially the concept when the USL Super League was brainstormed and created. But as the process went along, Amanda Vandervoort and her staff and owners in the league started realizing, hey, all of these Super League or all of these First Division qualifications, we're meeting them with the teams and the owners and the expectation of the stadiums and everything that's coming in. So, and I probably should have pulled up those First Division qualifications. We can talk about those more specifically down the line. But the fact that the USL Super League, Mauricio, could wind up being a First Division women's soccer league. Right now there's just the NWSL. It's the only professional women's soccer league in the country. Means a couple of things. One of which is that means that Jacksonville will have another team in the top league in its sport, in women's soccer, or a top league. It'd be code Division I. And number two is that if we do it right at Sporting JAX, in the best women's soccer playing country in the world, probably, you can debate that based on World Cup performance, but generally I think,
historically, sure.
Speaking, Jacksonville could be the best women's club soccer team in that country, which is an exciting thing to do because no matter how good the Jaguars become, they're always going to be lagging behind the history and tradition of Green Bay or Dallas or San Francisco or whomever. But because women's soccer pro women's soccer in the United States is a relatively recent phenomenon, we have the opportunity to do something pretty historic here if everything falls into place.
We do, and to your point, when the Super League had announced its launch as potentially as a Tier 2 second division, the image and the vision for that was primarily going to give college players an opportunity to go play somewhere that right now they don't, because the NWSL have a lot of international players, which is going to be a great concept and a great product. Now the hint and the idea that's going to be a tier 1 sport, to the points that you've mentioned kind of locally as far as like sponsorships and partners kind of attaching to that, the interest has grown internationally now, right? Because women's sport and women's soccer is still traditionally very underrepresented in most countries still. We took a trip to the Netherlands last year to go visit and then go watch the Champions League final between Barcelona women's and Wolfsburg. And when we talked about the Super League, the international players, international executives and teams were excited about the fact that not only starting on a fall calendar, and we can talk about that a little bit and what the impact that it would have, but still places for international players alongside domestic U.S. players to play, because there's still not that many places to play worldwide at a professional high level. So this is going to have an impact on the quality you talked about. Jacksonville can have a premier product as it relates to the women's product in soccer in the world. And because I think we have this kind of DNA here of our girls are typically really high performers, I think there's really a brewing recipe that's going to be special where we can give a place for our local talented players to develop and go through a pathway to play pro, and as international superstars potentially give them a place to play in Florida, where right before there hasn't been that place for them. So I think this could be a really kind of meeting ground of a special opportunity, being that tier 1 sport that has attracted now a lot more attention from investors and sponsors and so forth and so on, but also this mix between international and domestic opportunities.
Yeah, to me, it brings so many intriguing possibilities up, because if you are a player in Europe, Tony, and you're thinking about, you'd like to play in the United States. You think that the exposure is great, the opportunity to travel and play in a country that values women's soccer, which certainly some in Europe do, some do not, where the paychecks are coming, and it's not, you might get paid this week and might not, as can be the case in some countries. The opportunity to come here is big. And then if your decision is, well, do I want to play on a schedule where I can still play for my national team and not have to worry about missing club games, that's a pretty powerful lure.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce, I think, with the Super League. There's going to be these international players that do have ambitions to play for their national team. The calendar's better. For NWSL, it's easy. A lot of our American standouts play in the NWSL. That's great. And some do play overseas, but this might be one of the real differentiators for the Super League that'll really pay off. And one of the things that I think is interesting, and I'm not even sort of sure, I would love to actually ask Amanda about this, is the new television contracts that are coming. I don't know if you've seen the and forgive me if I don't, DAZN, is it, I don't know if it's, okay. They've got now the Euro contract, right? And every game is going to be free, which is super cool. So if you've got the app or whatever, and I don't think it's a super expensive subscription with DAZN, but that access is killer. And I know they're working hard in Tampa at the Super League headquarters on our media deal. But if we have any kind of real access to this league, I think it's going to help it really sort of catapult, because the demand, especially locally, we get as many calls about the Super League team as we do about the others, and interested players. We could, I think, with the amount of interest that we have, we could do trials right now. Well, it's too early. Yeah.
I get emails, and you do as well. And just today, just from a college coach, sent me his former players' information that she's playing in Ireland right now, and she'll love to come home and play in Florida in front of her home fans. So we're getting that on a weekly basis, and we have to break their hearts that we don't play until 25, 26. We still have a long way until forming a team. But the interest is getting there. And once we have some things that are going to be more concrete as far as a timeline specific, that we can make some announcements, I think that's going to start flowing in the interest of people that want to play at home, and all these talented players that have go overseas and to really backpack through Europe just for the dream of playing soccer. They get to do that in front of their families and their fans. It's going to mean a lot more to them.
Let me ask you, Mauricio, as a former college coach and a guy who's done a lot of scouting, when you talk about the opportunities for women's soccer players, right now there are something over 100 pro and semi-pro men's soccer teams in the United States. And before the Super League launches, there are 14 in the NWSL. Those are the only pro teams anywhere. It's pretty clear that there are not 7 times more professional level men's soccer players in the country than women. What is that gap though, and how much will the NWSL, or rather the USL Super League, when you start talking about maybe getting up to 30 total pro teams between the two leagues, how much of a gap will there still be after that for professional women's soccer in this country?
Yeah, and I think you hit it. I think the sky's the limit, right? If you kind of close the gap, and if sponsors and investors see the real potential that women's soccer have in this country, and we start proving the model that there's more than just enough players to field a 14-team league. Right, we can double that within this year. We're going to almost double that by just the addition of the Super League. To your point, in Division One, there's 325 Division One women's programs compared to 205 men's programs. So there's about 130 more women's programs in this country than men. That means there are a lot more young ladies playing at a high level that are waiting for that opportunity. Like, what happens when I get out of here, right? And the same amount of them are leaving for men and women, but there are more women playing. So statistically, there are less women opportunities as you mentioned, 7 times less potentially. So there's the question that people keep always asking, because of maybe what the product looks like, and you're not familiar with the women product versus the men product. They're different products, right? The games are played differently. Same to European product. That means that U.S. domestic leagues aren't any good just because the Champions League is so much better. No, they're different products, and there's space for different products. But question people always ask is, do we have enough talented young ladies to play the game to fill 2 leagues and multiple teams up to 30, 100%? They're playing, they're everywhere. And the more opportunities we have for them, we know what's going to happen. More interest is going to come, more development opportunities. The players are actually going to get better because the competition is going to be higher, because they're not just competing against the domestic players, but as we mentioned, international players that are going to want to flood the U.S. market because it's a great place to play and it's a great country to live, right? To raise your family or whatnot. So opportunities to play, absolutely. Talent to play, 100%.
Talk about development, and this goes to something that I was thinking about. You develop as players. There are some things that are lacking in, besides just opportunities for players in women's soccer in the United States right now, including coaching development, officials development, front office executive development. All those things are lacking because there's such a limited number of pro clubs that, again, will be expanding with the USL Super League. But, Tony, one of the things I was thinking of is that because you have the season for the USL Super League is going to be like an August to March, maybe April, based on playoffs kind of schedule. It's shorter than the USL Championship schedule. So now all of a sudden you've got the opportunity to, after the season is over, allow for some of the players on the team to learn other roles and to start developing for their post-soccer careers, working in the front office, working community development, working on coaching certification, scouting, that sort of thing. That's really exciting to me, that above and beyond just having games and having kids enjoy the games and families enjoy the games, that you'll have an opportunity to have a long-term impact with women in sports by having a pro soccer women's team here in Jacksonville.
And that's such an important point and so smart. And that, one of the 2 things that come to mind is with that schedule is that we're going to have year-round professional soccer. This is amazing. This is like we're really kind of hitting on a dream of mine for sure. But yeah, these players and coaches are going to be part of our community. When you sign for Sporting JAX, you get housing. You become part of the community. You've got a neighborhood. You've got a support system. You've got all the great things that we love about the quality of life here become your quality of life, and I'm super stoked about that. I always think about the Super League. I think about my sister who played Division I, who when her soccer college career was over, her career was over, and that's just not how it has to be, and not how we're going to see some generational changes in the number of pro teams on the men's and women's side. And man, it couldn't be a more exciting time to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Before we wrap it up, I want to remind everybody to become a member of Sporting JAX. Go to sportingjax.com. It's free. You become a member. There's some great benefits, including discount on merchandise and free entries into chances to win prizes and so forth. There, you can also put down your deposit for season tickets for the men and the women. Easy to do that. $25 will get you a ticket, or a ticket deposit. So be sure to do that. Also, if you're on YouTube a lot, to go ahead and like our YouTube page, subscribe to it. We'll have the Sporting JAX report each and every week that comes out there. Make sure you'll get that as well via our newsletter that you'll get when you become a member of Sporting JAX. So last thought here from the both of you. I just want to ask you about what you think the short-term and long-term impact of having the first professional women's pro team in Jacksonville is going to be, sort of short-term impact and long-term legacy. Mauricio?
Yeah, and I want to piggyback. To me, the impact is going to be on opportunities, not just on the field, but outside the field as well. Been in the college system for over 15 plus years. I've gone through several different hiring committees on hiring women's coaches in several different sports, not just in soccer. And what is constantly true is the limited amount of female women's professionals that are available, whether to opportunities or because they just never, to your point, they stopped their career in sport, stopped at college playing. Many of them didn't see their career continue to be after that, on or off the field. So I think we're going to see in this next 5 to 10 years, with these opportunities really doubling, more executives, more front office staff, more females in the workspace that is going to influence change, is going to influence rules, and going to influence the way that we see the game, influence sponsorships and opportunity partnerships coming alongside of them, because they'll be able to tell the story rather than a world that's mostly populated and dominated by male figures. They're going to be able to tell their own story. They're going to be able to sell their own product significantly better than we are going to. And we need that. If we want the game to evolve, it needs to mirror and represent what the product is on the field. So we can only do that to a certain extent. We can be supporters and champions of it. But having more women professionally working as coaches, as referees, front office, marketing, social, whatever it might be, up to executives and team presidents, we're going to start seeing that where now it's news that should be normalized over time, right? We're not going to be celebrating at one point that we're the first female women's president of a male club. Right now we celebrate that and it's great. It's paving the way. At one point, that'll be normalized.
Yeah, I think long term, one of the things that is just amazing right now, if you go to the top 100 high school girls soccer teams right now in Florida, a lot of them, especially in the top 10, are from here. We're going to get trophies. We're going to these girls now that become, they're going to be women, and they're going to play on our Super League and other teams and NWSL and whatever. We're stacked with talent, and so we're going to go after trophies and we're going to be competitive. So I think long term, we're just going to be a real juggernaut when it comes to women's soccer, and I'm stoked.
Can't wait for it. We'll have Becky Burley, by the way, on the podcast here in the next couple of weeks as well. We just did an episode with the Sporting JAX report with Becky talking about the way to bring up a women's team. If you're interested in hearing about that, check it out on YouTube. I think you'll not only, if you haven't heard Becky, you'll get why she's such a force in women's soccer, but also understand sort of what will be powering Sporting JAX from the women's side as well. For Tony Allegretti and Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. Thanks so much for listening to the Sporting Pod.